There's a document in the Florentine State Archive, a fragment badly water damaged, written in the tight ecclesiastical hand of a 14th century monk that lists 8 compounds by their distillation method, their storage requirements, and what happens to a man's heart if the dose is wrong. It's written in the same careful script as the recipe for fever tincture on the page beside it. Same ledger, same date, same hand. If the dangerous knowledge hidden inside medieval monastery workshops fascinates you, subscribe now. What this apothecary recorded in his ledger will haunt you until the very last page of this story. Welcome to Medieval Craft, where we follow the processes, the hands, and the dangerous knowledge that built the medieval world. Today we're going inside the monastery pharmacy of 1440, no, let me be precise, 1340. The date matters.
Begin with the inventory. Always begin with the inventory. What you cannot count, you cannot control.
That was Brother Simone's first rule. He'd run the dispensary at the Abbey of Sant'Apollinare, on a limestone ridge above the Arno Valley south of Florence, for 19 years. He'd inherited it from a monk who inherited it from a monk who learned the compounds from an Arab physician's translated text 140 years before that. Knowledge travels slowly through monasteries, and then all at once. The herb garden was the first thing you saw approaching the abbey, a rectangle of organized abundance behind a low limestone wall. Thyme in the front rows, sage, rosemary, the useful things planted nearest the gate because there was no reason to walk a visitor deeper into the garden than necessary. The other things were planted farther back, against the far wall, marked with small carved stones bearing 2 letters in Latin, NV for noxious, ML for medicinal, large doses, LD for the ones you didn't touch without knowing exactly why.
The belladonna is labeled. The hemlock is labeled. The rosemary is labeled. Any man who cannot read Latin should probably stay near the kitchen end.
Simone made this joke every time he walked a new lay brother through the garden. It was the least funny joke in the abbey, and everyone laughed anyway, because the alternative was to think too carefully about what they were standing next to. Below the garden, 10 steps down through an iron door set flush in the cloister floor, was where the real work happened. A barrel-vaulted room of Roman stonework, permanently scented with copper and wormwood, and a back note of sulfur that never quite cleared. Clay retorts on wooden shelving, glass vessels nested in straw, a work table of seasoned oak, burned dark in 3 places from years of heat sources placed slightly wrong. And at the far end of the room, standing apart from everything else, a cabinet of black walnut, iron-banded, 2 locks, 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide. The kind of container that didn't need a sign explaining what it held.
Brother Simone, the cabinet. Has it ever been opened when you weren't present?
No.
What happens if...
Fra Luca, what is today's task?
Fra Luca Tornabuoni was 18 and had been in the abbey for 2 years, sent by a father who couldn't feed 7 children through a bad wool market year. Luca wasn't a scholar. He had quick hands, a good memory for routes, and a habit of signing his name on receipts with a small drawing of a bird beside it. 3 pen strokes, like something a child would make. Simone had commented on it once. Luca shrugged and said it helped him find his receipts in a pile. Simple logic, the kind you can't argue with. The dispensary ran on Simone's record system. Every compound had a page in the master ledger. Its source materials, its distillation method, its storage requirements, its approved recipients, and the name and signature of whoever carried it. Simone was quietly proud of it, the way craftsmen are proud of tools that work the way tools should.
Every compound has a history. Every delivery has a name. I've always believed that what cannot be hidden cannot be misused.
He meant it. The record system was his version of moral philosophy, transparency as protection. He'd built the most complete pharmaceutical record in Tuscany. He was proud of this in October of 1339, when Fra Luca signed the delivery receipt with his little bird and carried a sealed package to the household of Giacomo Terry, a Florentine wool merchant with very particular medical needs. The letter from Florence arrived on a Tuesday morning in February. Red wax, the commune's tribunal seal, written on ordinary paper rather than parchment, a cost-cutting measure Simone noticed and filed as information about how seriously the tribunal valued this particular inquiry. It was addressed to the abbot, but the abbot brought it immediately to Simone. The subject line read, "Regarding the delivery of October the 14th, the year of our Lord 1339.
Brother Simone, do you know what this is about?
Simone set down his reed pen. He looked at the letter. He looked at the cabinet. He looked at the delivery ledger on the shelf, the bound parchment book with the leather cover, the one with Fra Luca's bird on page 47. Messer Corrado Rinaldi arrived at the Abbey of Sant'Apollinare 3 days after his letter. He was 41, a Florentine notary of the second rank who'd received a commission from the Albizzi family to investigate what they called the suspicious death of a commercial rival. The rival had died of heart failure. His physician had noted nothing irregular, but the Albizzi had connected several things together and hired a lawyer to prove the connection. Corrado's job wasn't to find truth. His job was to produce a conviction that was legally defensible. These aren't the same thing, and he knew it, and he was good at his work. He examined the dispensary with the careful attention of a man who looks at rooms the way documents look at testimony, for what's present, what's absent, what's been moved recently. He walked the shelving twice. He opened clay retorts and smelled their contents without touching. He counted the glass vessels. Then he stood in front of the black walnut cabinet and said nothing for a long time.
Brother Simone, your records. I'm told they're quite thorough.
Complete, Messer Rinaldi. Thorough implies the keeper judged what was worth including. My records contain everything that occurred.
Your records are exceptionally complete, brother.
I find that precision prevents misunderstanding.
Yes, I believe you're right.
Simone handed over the delivery ledger without being asked, because the subpoena requested it, because refusing would imply concealment, because he'd built the ledger as proof of transparency. He watched Corrado's hands move through the pages, watched the man's eyes stop on page 47, watched without visible emotion as Corrado took out his writing case and copied Fra Luca's name, Fra Luca's signature, and Fra Luca's small bird drawing into his own notes. That night, Simone sat alone in the dispensary after Vespers. One candle. He pulled the delivery ledger from the shelf. Corrado had returned it, noting his own copy was sufficient. And he read page 47 again. Then again. He was looking for something he could have missed. A clerical error. A smudge, a date discrepancy, an alternative reading of the handwriting, something that would let him say to the tribunal, the record doesn't say what you think it says. There was nothing. His record system was perfect. He had built it to be perfect. He knew what had happened in October. He'd known at the time that Giacomo Terry's household wasn't a standard pharmacy client. The compound wasn't for Terry's own health. Terry had been specific about the dosage schedule, about the delivery method, about who should carry it and when. Simone had told himself he was a pharmacist. His job was to prepare what was requested, record it accurately, and let those who commissioned the work bear the moral weight of how they used it. His hands smelled of lime and copper. The rest wasn't his.
The record is correct. Whatever Terry did with the compound, that's on Terry. Luca carried a sealed package. He didn't know what was in it. The tribunal will see that.
In the morning, he found Luca in the garden cutting rosemary. He told him there would be a tribunal, that the records were clear. And then, because he believed it, because his craft philosophy demanded it, he said the thing he would spend the rest of his life unable to take back. Luca nodded. He trusted Simone completely. He didn't stop drawing the small bird on his daily work receipts. He stayed at the Abbey when he could have slipped away on the road to Siena. He stayed because his master told him it would be enough. It wasn't enough, and Simone, looking at the ledger one last time before he closed it, suspected, in the part of himself he refused to examine, that he'd always known it wouldn't be. The tribunal met in a whitewashed room in the Palazzo del Podestà on a cold March morning. One shaft of light from a high window, the smell of tallow candles and old goatskin document bags. 3 magistrates on the raised bench, and Corrado Rinaldi at his notarial table to the left, with the subpoena delivery ledger open in front of him, his own notes layered on top like a second document talking back to the first. Brother Simone was sworn on the Gospels and asked to describe the nature of his work at Sant'Apollinare. He did this accurately and clearly. He was asked to describe the compounds held in the sealed cabinet. He listed them by Latin name, by primary pharmacological action, by approved uses. 9 compounds. He was asked whether any could produce cardiac failure in a healthy adult male if administered over several weeks in small doses. He said yes. He named 3 of the 9. He was asked about the delivery of October 14th. He confirmed it. The compound, the quantity, the recipient's name, the carrier's name. He was asked to identify the carrier's signature in the ledger. He looked at page 47 and identified Fra Luca Tornabuoni's name and the drawing beside it. He was asked whether Fra Luca had known the contents. Simone said he had no record of that. Corrado let that sit in the room for a long moment. Then he asked whether Simone had known, at the time of preparation, that the compound was being delivered to a household where Giacomo Terri's guest, a business rival named Benedetto Castellani, was staying that week. Simone said he hadn't known that. Corrado nodded, made a note, said, "Brother Simone, you are an extremely careful record keeper." It wasn't a question.
I try to be.
And your record shows that Fra Luca Tornabuoni delivered a compound capable of producing cardiac failure to the household where Benedetto Castellani died of what his physician recorded as cardiac failure. Is that a correct reading of the document?
Simone looked across the room. Fra Luca was seated on a bench against the wall, 18 years old, very pale, looking at Simone the way an apprentice looks at a master, waiting to be told what to do, waiting for the man with 19 years of careful knowledge to use some of it in his direction. Simone looked back at Corrado. He thought about the ways he could answer. He could claim memory failure, but Corrado had his written copy of the ledger. He could dispute the causal chain, but he'd just confirmed the pharmacology under oath. He could say the compound had a dozen legitimate uses, but he just listed cardiac suppression as one of its properties. He had, in his precision, closed every door, one careful record at a time, over 19 years. The verdict took less than an hour. Fra Luca Tornabuoni was found to have acted as material instrument in the death of Benedetto Castellani. He was sentenced to hang within the fortnight. His age was noted in the record. It changed the outcome by not at all. If you've ever wondered how a monastery becomes an instrument of power, the answer is documentation. Every compound, every delivery, every name. If you want to know what happens to those records next, you'll want to stay subscribed. This channel covers a new craft every week, the dangerous ones especially. Simone walked back to the Abbey alone, 6 miles on a road beside the Arno. He was thinking about page 47, about what he could have written instead. A different date, a smudged name. A page somehow misplaced between January and March, leaving October with a gap no one could have proven was intentional. He'd been a careful man for 19 years. He could have been careless for one entry. He hadn't been, because he genuinely believed that what cannot be hidden cannot be misused. He returned to the dispensary to find 2 of Corrado's men waiting with a tribunal writ. The sealed cabinet was to be inventoried and its contents transferred to a tribunal-appointed custodian. The custodian was, Simone later learned, a physician employed by the Albizzi family. The 9 compounds that had sat in that black walnut box for 200 years, dispensed only by men who recorded every grain, were now going directly to the household of the family that had commissioned the investigation. The justice that destroyed Fra Luca had handed the most dangerous pharmacy in Tuscany to the most dangerous family in Florence. Everything that had been locked for 200 years was now open, distributed, entirely out of Simone's careful hands. The abbot refused, politely. Completely. He understood Simone's distress. Truly, he said. But the Abbey's appeal had to be weighed against the Abbey's survival. The tribunal had found a material instrument, not an institutional actor. Sant'Apollinare was clean. The dispensary would be rebuilt. Individual errors must be weighed against institutional continuity. He wasn't wrong, exactly. He was applying the same logic Simone had applied on October 14th. Simone wrote to the podesta. He argued that his testimony, while accurate, had been incomplete, that he hadn't conveyed the full breadth of legitimate uses for the compound. He requested reconsideration. The podesta's office returned his letter within the week. As Simone had sworn to the completeness of his testimony before God and the commune, any claim of incompleteness raised questions about the original oath. If he wished to pursue this, he could file a formal complaint of perjury against himself. He didn't file the complaint. Fra Luca was hanged on the 28th of March. He hadn't tried to escape. He'd stayed because he believed Simone would find something. His bird was on the receipt. He'd signed it himself. It was enough for the law. Simone stood in the empty dispensary 2 days later. The black walnut cabinet was gone, carried away on a cart, its contents cataloged by Corrado's men. The shelving that had held it for 150 years showed a clean rectangle of slightly different colored stone. The copper and wormwood smell was already starting to dissipate. Too much ventilation now. The room breathed differently without the weight of what had stood there. Simone didn't hear this. Luca never said it. But the dispensary felt like it needed saying. And so someone's voice, maybe the part of Simone he'd refused to listen to for 19 years, said it in the empty room. He thought about parchment. You began with the skin of a dead animal. You soaked it in lime water until the hair slipped loose. You scraped it, stretched it wet on a frame. As it dried, it became something else entirely. Hard, white, capable of holding words for centuries. Death became record. That was the craft's fundamental transformation. The substance that once held a living thing's warmth became the medium that held information longer than any living thing could. He sat at the work table and began to write. Everything. What the cabinet had held. What he'd prepared on October 14th and why. What he'd known about Terry's actual intentions and chosen not to examine, because examining it would have required refusing the commission, and refusing the commission would have disrupted the Abbey's relationship with the Florentine merchant class. He wrote about finding Luca's name in the ledger and spending a night looking for an error that wasn't there. He wrote about the testimony. He wrote about watching Luca's face. He wrote it all in his careful hand, numbered the pages, signed his name and the date. Then he folded the pages, sealed them with wax, the Abbey's mark, pressed with the same stamp he'd used 10,000 times, and filed it in the archive between two other documents from March of 1340. Because that was what you did with something you wanted to survive. Messer Corrado Rinaldi received his commission from the Albizzi family the following month. He took 2 more investigative briefs, both of which produced convictions. Then, in 1344, he stopped taking cases. His colleagues noted he'd started drinking in the afternoons. He resigned his notarial position the following year, citing poor health, and moved to a village east of Prato. He didn't practice law again. The Abbey rebuilt its dispensary over the following decade. A new cabinet was built, new records begun. The knowledge that had sat in the black walnut box dispersed through several Florentine households and did what dispersed knowledge always does. It spread further, became less controlled, did more damage than it had done in one place under one careful hand. Brother Simone served at the Abbey for another 31 years. He rebuilt the dispensary's records from scratch. He added a confirmation step. Every delivery now required 2 signatures. He told himself this would prevent what had happened. He didn't tell himself it would have saved Luca. He knew better than to lie to the record. The document he wrote that March evening was recovered in 1882 by a Florentine archivist cataloging the Sant'Apollinare collection. She noted it as significant, published it in a journal. It's one of very few primary source accounts of 14th century pharmaceutical practice that includes the practitioner's own perspective, rather than just records of compounds. Scholars read it. Historians cite it. It's used to teach medical ethics in at least 2 Italian universities, paired with the tribunal's records from the Castellani case, which survive intact, filed correctly, accessible to any researcher with a permit. The delivery ledger is also there. Page 47. The bird is exactly as described. 3 pin strokes. Clear ink on good parchment. Luca's hand was steady the day he signed it. He had no reason to think he was writing anything important. Medieval pharmacology was real chemistry. The monks who tended the poison gardens knew exactly what they were doing. The distillation methods, the extraction ratios, the difference between a therapeutic dose and a lethal one. They kept records because records were how knowledge survived. They kept records because records were how innocence was proved. They kept records because a careful man who records everything believes he has discharged his duty to truth. Brother Simone was a careful man. His records were perfect. Fra Luca Tornabuoni was 18 years old and liked to draw birds. One of those things outlasted everything. The other lasted a fortnight past March, in a courtyard behind the Palazzo del Podesta, and then it didn't. Medieval craft covers a new manufacturing process every week. The dangerous knowledge, the lost techniques, the craftsmen who built civilization with their hands and their careful records. If this one stayed with you, subscribe. The next one might too. The sealed cabinet's rectangle of clean stone is still visible in the dispensary at Sant'Apollinare. The abbey is a museum now. You can visit on weekdays. The guide will show you the herb garden, the Roman barrel vault, the original iron door in the cloister floor. She'll mention the pharmaceutical tradition. She probably won't mention Fra Luca. His name isn't on the sign. His name is on a document in an archive box, filed between 2 entries from a march in 1340. It's there if you know where to look, which is the most that can be said for most of the people who touched the dangerous things and left no other record of having existed.